Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's Margaret Manning here. Welcome to 60 and Me. I hope that you're having a good day today. I'm up early, bright and early as always, and having my cup of tea. I hope you got a cup of coffee or tea with you and just getting settled in your day or maybe ending your day, whichever continent you're joining us from. But anyway, I hope that you're doing good. I'm drinking my puka mint refresh tea. Now, this is an interesting tea. It says it's a combination of peppermint, fennel, and rose. But when I looked on the back of it, it actually says it's got all those things I just mentioned, plus licorice root, hibiscus flower, and coriander seed. So it's really an interesting tea, and it tastes actually quite good. I'm not a huge mint tea drinker, but this has got something in it. Maybe it's the hibiscus, but I knew there was something more than just the mint teas, which is called Mint Refresh. But anyway, that's my tea of choice this morning. So I'm sure you've all got your favorites, and I'd love you to tell me about them too. Just leave a comment in the section below. Which tea have I not tried? I think we'd have to go very deep and far because I'm a huge tea lover. So anyway, I hope that you're enjoying your morning or your afternoon or evening, wherever you are. So I think I've told you a few times that I go back to the UK quite frequently. I have a son who lives in Scotland, and I was born there. I was born in London, and whenever I go back, I always remember I'm a London girl. It's sort of the place of your birth always has that kind of effect, and I really do always get quite nostalgic when I go back to the UK. And so when I read this article by one of our bloggers, Sally Fox, about looking at your past to help you shape your future, I just thought that was a really interesting angle at dealing with nostalgia and making it positive, looking at the things that shaped you and how you are a different person because of that. It's really funny. I went back to where I was born in Acton, which is near Hammersmith in West London. And I don't think I've ever told you this story, but I went back there just for a walk and I went to the actual street where I lived as a child. I found it, in my birth certificate, and I went back and I went to the house, and it was a small little house, like a terrace place, and there was no gate on the front door, so I just sort of walked in, peeked in. I don't think anyone was home, but I looked around, and it was amazing. There was like a garden of the same flowers I remember, hollyhocks and all those ones that you used to do things with your fingers. I forget what they're called, little but beautiful flowers. And I looked up, and there were factories all around, like big buildings, and I thought, oh my gosh, as a child, I all I could see was the flowers. That was my world. I could see the flowers, and there they were still. And I looked up above the hedge. There was a hedge, and there was just like full of urban London, as it always has been. Probably even maybe more like the old time than other parts of London. That part of London has been not very developed, at least not where I lived. So anyway, it was so funny to see what I saw as a child and how it impacted me. And I guess it's that for me, that combination of urban and country. That I love the city, but I also really love, beautiful nature, gardens, and simplicity. So anyway, that was my little story, my journey down memory lane. But Sally puts a bit of a more dynamic and active approach to this idea of looking at your past and giving your future more purpose. So she talks about 5 questions that can be really a powerful motivator in just getting to the bottom, like of where you started and finding a trail, from the past to the future. And of course, she talks about how this can lead to very strong and powerful insights, and nothing perhaps as simple as what I was describing, but maybe about your careers you chose and the people that you've chosen to be with you in your life. How going back and finding that trail, back to your past, can help. So here's her 5 questions, and then we'll talk a little bit about them. But you can read the article in more detail, and it's kind of a thought-provoking story. So first of all, can you tell me about a time when you were in love with what you were doing? The second question, has there been a moment when your values really guided your actions? The next question was, tell me about a time when your work or your life felt engaging and satisfying and you really felt motivated. Can you remember a time in your life? The fourth question is, can you tell me about a time when you were in touch with your passion? Another fifth question is, what was one moment in your life when you felt like your life mattered? Now, those are pretty powerful questions, and I really don't think it applies just to childhood. I think this is, your life. And I think that once you've had a chance to kind of think over those five questions, you can then use the stories of your life to discover how you live your values. How things that happened to you when you were younger, in your teens, in your formative years, your career years, marriage years, children years, how they really did shape you. So can you think about those times? I mean, I won't go back and read the questions again, but you got the gist of it. When were the times when your life mattered? When was there a time in your life when you lived your values? I think those are super, super important. Now, telling a story is really most important. So once you've answered those questions, can you create a story around the topic, around the answer to that question? Ask yourself, if you've thought of that time when values drove an action or drove a decision, restate to yourself, what are your values? What are the things that are really important to you? And don't make them abstract, like honesty is a value to me or compassion is a value. Tell me a story, or tell yourself a story about when that really was played out, when you made a decision because honesty is a value and you had to live with it. You had to live by it. And that's really, really important. So, look at it through your actions and not just through the words. Ask a friend, to come sit with you one day and just tell her a story or him a story about this particular time in your life when a value, for example, played out in your world. And tell them to do only one thing, and that is to just keep saying, tell me more. Tell me more. Okay, tell me more. And that's all they've got to do is just to go back and help you to find that stream of questions that lead you to the clarity about the memory. I think it's really important. Looking back, we can see the stream of consciousness. We can see how this led to this, and so on. But what was it that was the kind of the glue that held it all together? What was the map? The dots. It's really funny. I remember Steve Jobs said this about you can never connect the dots until you're at the end of the road. You just can't see how things connected until you actually go back and look at it and say, that was why I did that, or that's the decision I made because of this part of me. And I think it's so important to remember those highlights in your life that really clarified who you were, what was important to you, and in doing that, as we hear is you can predict your way forward. You can actually see how your future can play out. It can play out in your life in a way that's really valuable. And I think that's super. Sally was very insightful in writing this article in such a way that it's so dynamic and so actionable. I think it's really cool. So learn from a peak moment. That's one thing she highlights, is that if you've had moments in your life where you really were either hurt or you had a aha moment, you made a big decision that changed the direction of your life, think about those peak moments and how they might have changed who you were, how you changed your whole life. I've got so many of them. I mean, from my time at Microsoft, I mean, I had several jobs there. I was there for about 17 years. And I would, every time I would change jobs or my group would change, I would have to do an interview. And I remember one interview I did with someone, Austin, and he and I sat down in his office and he asked me to tell me I think he said something, who are you, or what's important to you? He was a very, very good teacher and excellent boss. Learned so much from him. But anyway, he said that something that stirred me. And I started to say, well, when I started my career and blah, 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 and do all and I said, I think my mind, it just switched. And I said, just say something else. And I said, I'm Lakshmi. And he said, you're Lakshmi? Who's Lakshmi? And I said, Lakshmi is an Indian goddess, and she represents two things to me. She values the things that are important in the spiritual dimension of her life, in the people, her relationships, but she has her hands pointing down to the earth with gold coins coming from her hands, symbolizing the abundance and wealth, and that it's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to want things out of life. And I went on for 5 minutes telling him about how that was my character, that's who I was. And he asked me, I think, a couple of more questions, and then that was it. And he, of course, didn't offer me the job that moment, but I did get the job, and I worked with him for a couple of years, and it was an absolute highlight of my life, working in that job, in that particular role, with that particular person. And yeah, that's it. That's the way it goes. And that was a peak moment for me. So, what did that teach me? It taught me basically to just be myself, to be honest, and to be to put my values and to paint a story around it, rather than to boast about my accomplishments or to point to certain things, but to actually just speak from my heart. And I think that's a really, really, that for me, that was, I've now taken that forward in my life, and it's how I live my life today. Anyway, that's kind of a personal story, but I hope you find that kind of an example. And maybe in your life, you can think of a peak moment that changed everything about the way you present yourself, about the person you are. I really like this article. I think that if you can read it through again and answer those questions, think about your future based on your past, you might get some really wonderful insights. Thanks, Sally, for the article. I really did enjoy reading it and applying it to my own life, and I think women in our community will find it great too. But I'd love to know about your own experience. Have you ever found that you've been looking back in your past and see how it shaped your present and your future? How are you finding purpose in your life in your 60s? I'd love to hear your comments. Please leave conversations in the section below. As always, like comments, respond to them, share them, get engaged. I mean, this community is powerful in that respect, that we do tell each other what's on our minds, and we help each other out along the journey. So I'd love to know, have you discovered how to shape your future based on your past? Well, have a wonderful day, everybody. Hope you found this useful conversation. Look forward to joining in the chat, and just take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye for now.